Hello and welcome to Admirals of the Navy. I'm Jacko, and today I'm bringing you the long-awaited video where we're going to be going into detail about how to be building advanced hulls. So, let's get to it. But before we do, I want to just say that the way I'm going to show you how to build these hulls, it's not the only way, it might also not be the best way, it's just how I do it. And I've made some okay looking ships, I think. So yeah, but there's some much better builders out there that might be able to give you other advice which is just as good, if not even better. So now that that's done, let's get right to it. So I want to explain a bit first, and then later on we're going to be doing an example build so I can show you how it's done. Okay, so let's go over the basics first real quick. So every ship hull is built out of multiple layers stacked upon on top of each other. So in this example build, which is the Tai-Ho, which I've built myself, so we have the bottom hull consisting of just the normal adjustable hull pieces that you can get in your inventory. And of course I've adjusted the widths and spread, so on and so forth. I would have more on that later. So basically what we have here is the underhull, which is the red. Now in my case I've just made this one big section, but on bigger ships, or if you want more details, you can of course use 2 or 3 sections just for this underhull, and same goes for the upper hull. In this case, again, this ship, it's the main body anyway, it only has 2 parts, one lower hull and one upper hull freeboard part. Although in the front, for example, you can see, since I wanted some more detail for the curvature of the bow, I decided that I was going to keep the one under hull part, but then divide the upper hull freeboard into 2 parts, well, again, so I can get a better curvature. Now you still see this curvature is pretty rough, especially around the edges, so if you want more detail on your builds, it's rather simple. The methods stay the same. You're just going to have to use more parts, which obviously just takes more time and makes the values, of course, a bit more finicky. Since the differences and the curvatures get smaller and smaller the more sections or segments you stack on top of each other. Good. So now that we got the basics of the hull done, let's talk about the bow and the stern a bit more in detail. So, main hull, of course, is rather easy to build. You decide the width. Usually your underhull covers the entire widening, well, using the roundness and spread, of course. And then the broadside on the freeboard, so the above water part of your broadside, usually on most ships, except maybe some pre-dreadnoughts or similar things, but usually it's just flat. So you have a set width and absolutely no spread, and that gives you this flat broadside, which is rather easy. So if you build your hull, you usually start in this middle, you decide the width, build up basically, and then just decide on the height of your hull, build this whole middle part, and then that's that. Good. And then you start building your bow. Now, the bow, of course, the bow must narrow in, since you don't want to be pushing a flat bore cube through the water. So what happens is basically what I do, I start with the low hull, of course, and I decide on about the length I want to go with, though you can change that on the go still. And I start stacking these segments forward and just narrowing them in. So I start in by narrowing it by 1 meter per segment. Then over here you see I started narrowing it by 2 meters width per segment. Then over here in the very front I went to 3 until the end here, where it well, goes to 0. Which gives me this well, nice curvature if you look at it from afar. Now, of course, here we don't want it, or at least usually you don't want it to just go straight up like the broadside. So what we're going to do here is add curvature to the bow, which also gives us nice bow structures. Now in this case I have a Japanese bow, and our Japanese bows, they are pretty wide and round in the front. Other nations historically have different hull forms, which we're going to be going on over later. Okay, but for now, let's just take this one as an example. So I have a rather wide hull, and I want this round front. So what I'm going to have to do is, as soon as the underhull starts narrowing in over here, with this segment, what I do is, so the first few segments of narrowing, I'm going to balance them, basically balance them out by adding spread to these upper sections. So by that, you can see on the hull up here, we still have a straight line all the way up to this segment, even though the underhull is already has been converging towards the front. And again, so this makes it basically so that firstly you get this nice outward curvature towards the front, and it allows you to shape the deck properly, since usually you don't want like a spike bow. Good. And I mean that's basically the method. So as the underhull curves in towards the bow, or also the stern at that actually, you have these spread things. So you basically add spread at the beginning, and then you decide, okay, so now I want my hull, my deck to narrow in as well. So then as you can see here, I kept the spread the same, so at 1, and that makes it so that basically, in here it goes in further, but I'm not curving the upper hull out anymore, so the deck actually starts narrowing in as well. And then towards the front you see the same thing that I've done back here, the transition from the main hull. The underhull starts narrowing in as well, even more, but I didn't want the deck to start narrowing in as much quite yet. So again, I started upping the spread to 2 in this case, or even to 3. And that allowed me to keep this line on the deck basically straight, even though the underhull was narrowing in. And now if you continue this all the way up to the bow, you basically get this nice curvature shape. And again, in this case, this is a Japanese bow, so towards the front here we get quite a lot of curvature in order to achieve this like long, wide deck space with this like round-ish, ending to it. Good. So I hope that was that's logical, and I hope you all understood that part. Good. So now while we're at the bows, let's go over elevated bows. Now this is an older version. There's better ways to do this elevated bow since the last update, where negative spread was added. But let's just quickly go over the basics. So basically most modern ships have or use elevated hulls. So what you want to do is just take an adjustable hull piece, place it down. Now the way I did this, you have to invert them. I want to reduce the roundness, of course adjust the bits to the width of the hull. So let's take that for example. Whatever, that's going to work fine, just for me showcasing it. The height, we want it 1, let's just say 1. And then what you do is you use the height offset, and with the height offset you can slope these bits. So basically what you do is, although at a smaller scale maybe than what I'm doing right now, basically you take this part with a slope, put it down, and then you have like the first part, as you can see here. So my hull is going up with the slope, and then following that for the next segment, you need to take a straight part again. So let's adjust the widths here real quick. There's some NavalArt bugs here. Okay. So now, like this, for example. Okay, so now we basically need a flat section to continue our slope section. Now, this isn't perfect, but this is just ignore that. Again, to further elevate the bow, basically you're just going to do what we did before, so you just need another slope. Of course, adjust the widths properly. And now, since you might want basically the sloping here to increase, basically what you have to do is just up the overall height of the block, and that's going to make the slope steeper. So as you can see here, this is basically an upward curving now. And of course, if you do this on a much smaller scale, of course, you can achieve quite a good bow elevation. Good. Now I know this isn't very specific, but again, well, I don't have time to show you this in very detail, sadly, since that would just blow the frame of this video. Good. So let's get over to the stone real quick and talk about that as well a bit. So, basically we have the same as we just had with the bow. So the underhull, of course, starts narrowing in, and then the upper hull is, well, gonna go straight for a bit. By using spread again, I'm making sure that the deck extends straight here a bit longer than the actual underhull. So you see, it's narrowing in here, but up here it's still straight. And by using spread again, I'm curving this a bit. And the farther we go back, the more the curvature gets. Until at the very end here, I of course remove the entire curvature with this triangle. Okay, so I think that's actually quite self-explanatory. So just use spread to basically negate the difference between the deck shape you want and the underhull shape you want. And this is of course again important because you don't want your complete side of the ship to be flat. That's usually not going to look particularly good. Okay, so now one thing that is a bit more interesting is how to do these aft sections of the underhull. Since of course if you just keep this at the same height as the rest of the hull, you won't be able to properly fit your propellers. I can actually show an example of that, of one of my very first ship builds, and then you're going to see what the problem is. So, well, here I already fixed this in a very bad way. This is a horrible ship. Please don't. Please don't use this as an example. Just want to show you what not to do. So basically here we have this hull, and then I use just a single piece to try to make some space down here for the propellers. But this, of course, looks absolutely horrible. So instead what you want to do is make the slope longer. So the way that I do it, now there's two ways to do this as far as I've seen. The first way is to use the technique that you would use on an elevated bow, and do basically this section with a lot of detailed sloping. Or what I do, honestly, because I'm just lazy, and I don't want to be spending too many hours building my hulls, is I make sure that there's a long section of basically straight convergence towards the aft. So if I remove this part, you see that I've made sure that this line basically here is straight. So I still have the deck the way I wanted to, but then I basically use the spread, pretty extreme spreads actually at this point, to make sure that I had a straight line here, because then what you can do is just make one long segment, and of course adjust the convergence via the widths, and then use what I've shown you for the front, use the height offset to have this slope, which is then going to allow you to get a relatively good sloping towards the back, and of course give the rudders and propellers some proper space. Yeah, I think this looks quite good, and again, it doesn't take that long. The alternative is basically using a lot of these slopes, just at much smaller scale, which makes for some amazing hulls, don't get me wrong, but it takes hours upon hours to make, even if you're an experienced builder. So you're just gonna have to decide, really, if you have that kind of dedication for the ship you're building. Well, yes. Good. So now that we've gone over the basics of building the ship, I want to go real quick about some of the special shapes of hulls that there are. So, as I've already mentioned, one of them is these Japanese bows. They are rather wide and then have a roundish front. So to achieve this, you still have the same underhull as with all other ships, so this is pretty standard. But then the upper hull has a much stronger curvature the further you get to the front, and then it narrows at the very, very tip. It narrows in very fast. So if I go like this, you can see there's a very, very strong curvature here, and then here at the tip, it narrows in very fast, which then in the end gives us this very long but still rounded off bow. Okay. A more normal hull form. Let's see if I can find one. For example, here. Now this ship isn't finished, so don't judge. But a bit more of a normal hull form would be this, where it narrows in a much more balanced way. So here, well, of course, you can again see the high curvature over here, since this is a German bow, so these also have a pretty wide hull in the front, but they don't narrow in, or they don't converge to the tip as fast. So here you have a bit more of a, well, pokey bow, I'm going to call it. So it's basically the same as the Japanese bow, but on the tip it doesn't narrow in as fast. So, you know, it doesn't look that round, but a bit more, well, spiky, if we want to call it that. Good. Now another thing, well, that's it mainly for the bows. So now we want to go to the sterns. And I'm going to see if I have a ship lying around that actually uses that. I think I do. Yes. So with the stern, there's a special shape. So most ships will just have basically, well, if you want to call it rounded convergence towards the aft, same as on the bow, just usually a bit shorter, so it doesn't look as, well, spiky. But there's a more special shape, and that is a flat stern. So, wow, ignore this construction. This is an older ship as well, so this underhull is obviously horrible, as far as I'm concerned anyway. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. So what I'm here to talk about is basically these flat sterns. So what you do here is basically you start narrowing your hull towards the aft, same as you do on the front, or as you do with any other stern. And then instead of continuing this convergence until, well, a tip, basically what we do is we make a cut, and then usually what you want to do is not just, you know, keep this flat surface, since that doesn't look good. So most ships have some kind of sloping. Older ships might actually have a downward sloping, so something like this. This ship, for example, being a ship inspired by the French Galissonnaire, this had like a downward slope, so basically what I used was an adjustable hull, and using the height offset at 1, and of course, you know, adjusting the widths and all, and by that I was able to achieve this bit of a slope, which actually makes the ship look a lot more complete around the stern, and less just, well, cut off. Good. So, that's actually that for the basics. I hope I've covered everything. Well, that's generally important. If there's any questions, of course, feel free to ask them in the comments or message me on Discord. My nickname is Lord Admiral Jacko on the Primary Game Discord channel. You can find the link to the Discord channel in my channel description. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Also, let me know if you want to see another one on some more special hull shapes. And by special, I mean like submarine hulls, airship hulls, since of course you can actually make airships and submarines in NavalArt as well. I mean also Star Destroyers, but I wasn't planning on covering that. So yes, if you want to see a bit on how to be building airship hulls or submarine hulls, or in general submarines maybe, or airships, just let me know in the comments, or again message me on the Discord. I'm glad for all the feedback. If you've liked this video, please consider to like and subscribe. It just helps me and also means that lets me know that you guys actually enjoy my content, and I'm of course going to be trying to make some more of it more frequently. Good. So I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.